So welcome to Team Building with Mary. Today I want to talk about something that is quite pertinent right now, something that we're all experiencing. I want to talk about remote working because we are right in it at this moment. Remote working, perhaps flexible working, is something that employees have been desiring for a very long time. And with the COVID pandemic, it's kind of just thrown us into it. Now we don't have a choice. Remote working is now part of the culture for most businesses. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. There are lots of benefits on both sides, on both the part of the employee and the employer. There are lots of benefits, but there are also challenges. And today we want to look at how we can address some of those challenges so we can make remote working work for us. That is what we're talking about today. And one of the main challenges for the employee is loneliness and isolation, and especially where people are perhaps living on their own, maybe they don't have family. This time is really difficult for people to cope. And for the employer, it's difficult in the sense that you lose a part of the engagement with the staff, that I don't want to call it control, but just being aware of what's going on, that constant communication that can be lost because of remote working. But we can absolutely make it work. And today I just wanted to share just a few points that I believe will really help us to make remote working work for us. The first thing I want to say is it's important that you prepare your staff for remote working. Don't take it for granted. Don't assume. Now, obviously, this is the second time we're going into lockdown, so perhaps people are more conversant with it, they're more familiar with it, but I would say don't take anything for granted. Let them know what to expect. Let them know that they have to set a routine, for instance, because when you're going to work, nobody needs to tell you that. You wake up in the morning, you know what you need to do. But when you're working from home, that could become a challenge, setting a routine. But that's extremely important that they have a routine. So just preparing them to establish a routine, take breaks, create a workspace, just simple things like that. But really important that you're able to communicate that to your team. But also, the other thing that you can do is constant communication. And when I say constant communication, I don't mean checking up. Because that's something that some managers have found themselves falling into, feeling the need to check up on on the members of their team to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Finding themselves now micromanaging. When you find yourself micromanaging, that is an indication that something is not quite right. One, it's an indication of a lack of trust on your part, and an indication on their part that maybe they're not pulling their weight, perhaps, or a combination of both. But either way, there is a problem that needs to be resolved. So micromanaging is never a good thing. So when I say communicate, I don't mean micromanage, but we have to get more intentional in the way we communicate with those in our team when they're working remotely. So it will be helpful to establish routines or time frames. Let them know when you're going to check on them. Let them know you will check on them about mid-morning, lunchtime and evening or whatever. And let them know those check-up times is for their benefit. I think it's quite important to communicate that to them, that it's for their benefit. It's not me checking up on you to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. It's me checking up on you to find out how I can be of assistance, to find out how you are doing. At this time, obviously, mental wellness is a big thing. It's always been a big thing, but more so now than ever. People are going through all sorts of stress. People are working with kids at home. And so being mindful of their mental wellness is a big thing. It's a big responsibility. I mean, I had a friend who was furloughed for months, and throughout that period, her manager never called once to check up on her. And I said to her, your manager probably didn't mean anything bad by it. In their minds, you're furloughed, you're not working, so you're kind of out of the radar. But this person is expected to go back to work. So how are you going to maintain that relationship? Even those who are furloughed, just find out from time to time how they are doing. But for those working from home, check up on them and let them know the checkups is to find out how they're doing, how they're getting on, what they need. And it really should be about that. It really should be about that. So when I say communicate, I mean really communicate and listen, more on the listening part than the speaking part when you're doing this communication. 3 things I would advocate that you ask. 1, how are you? How are you? That is a question we ask, but we don't really expect the honest answer, and we don't even wait for the honest answer. You ask, how are you? And in the same breath, you move on to something else. This is not the time to do that. This is the time to ask, how are you? And really wait for the answer and really listen to the answer. Find out what they're working on. Find out how you can help them. How can I help you? How can I support you? That will go a long way to making your team feel valued, making them feel like you've got their back, and it will really help them to be more productive, to be quite honest, because people generally want to be productive. People want to be productive. It's inbuilt in us. You feel more drained when you haven't had a productive day than when you haven't had a productive day. So people generally want to be productive. We had my annual Live to Lead conference. It's an annual personal growth and leadership development conference. We had the CEO of the Kent Invicta Chamber of Commerce come speak to us, Jo James, and she was saying, what we've realized, we don't really need people sat at their desks from 9 to 5. Because when you really think about it, how many of those hours do people really remain productive? So what you want to do is you want to really get clear on the KPIs that you're going to be focusing on to measure production or productivity. You really want to be clear on that, because obviously we still need to get the job done. I remember the story of British Airways, wasn't it? It was British Airways. British Airways was having problems, and John King is very famously known for turning British Airways around, and apparently he did it on just one KPI. And he said, I want to know whenever a plane takes off more than 2 hours late. I want to know. That's the only thing I want you to bring to my attention. And just using that one metric turned British Airways around, because when a plane took off more than 2 hours later than it should have, the pilot is getting a phone call from Mr. King. And so obviously that trickles down the line, because the pilot needs to now flag up why the plane was late, and that goes to maybe maintenance or whatever caused the plane to be late. Now everybody had to sit up, because no pilot wanted to get a phone call from John King. And so just that one thing turns things around. So what you need to do is to maybe get clear on the important KPIs. I would say keep it as simple as possible, so it can be monitored, it can be measured, and monitor performance that way. But trust your people that they want to do a fantastic job for you. And if you are building that relationship and showing them care like you ought to as a leader, I really believe that remote working can work for you.